My name is Greg, and my wife and I have been married for 3 years, together for nearly 6. We don't have kids, no real assets to our name, just more debt than cash in our checking account. We rent a house, and I'm the primary breadwinner, bringing home about $6,000 a month, while she nets around $1,800. I work my ass off to provide the life she's accustomed to, but now I'm facing the unthinkable. My work family is pretty tight-knit, and about 2 years ago, a coworker invited me to join a recreational soccer league. I played before, so I was excited to join. My wife attended every game, and at first, I thought it was to support me. But deep down, I knew it was more about the drinking. I took it easy on the alcohol, knowing I had work the next day, but she would drink freely, enjoying the social aspect of it more than the game itself. After most games, some of us would get together, sometimes at a bar, a pizza joint, or even our place. It became a routine. Then, a couple of weeks ago, after a game, a few of the guys and girls were planning to hang out at one of the guys' houses a city away. I told them I wouldn't be going. I had work early in the morning. On the ride home, she was glued to her phone. Then she turned to me. "Hey, do you mind if I go to the party?" I glanced at her, gripping the wheel. "What?" I literally just said we're not going. "I have work in the morning." Her tone shifted, laced with irritation. "Yeah, but you don't have to come. I can just get a ride." I scoffed, shaking my head. "No, I want to be with you tonight." Silence. The kind of silence that carried weight, the angry, drunken kind. She crossed her arms and stared out the window. I could feel her frustration radiating off her. As I pulled into our driveway, headlights flashed behind us. A car rolled to a stop. I recognized it immediately. My so-called buddy. My stomach tightened as I realized what she had done. She had texted him behind my back, arranging for him to pick her up the second we got home. I put the car in park and turned to her. "Are you serious right now?" She said nothing, just opened the door and stepped out. I got out too, marching toward my buddy's car before she could get in. "Hey, man," I said, my voice low and firm. "This isn't happening. She's staying here." He hesitated, looking between the two of us. But before he could say anything, my wife walked right past me and got into his car. I clenched my fists, my jaw tightening. "Unbelievable," I muttered under my breath. They drove off, leaving me standing there in the driveway, my hands shaking with anger. I stormed inside, my mind racing. I knew exactly where she was going. The old iPad I had bought for her years ago was dead, but I knew it was still connected to her accounts. I plugged it in and waited. Sure enough, once it powered up, her messages and location popped up. I sat there, staring at the screen, watching the little that represented her move around the city. I wanted to call her, to demand she come home, but I didn't. Instead, I stayed up, waiting. Midnight came and went. 1 o'clock. 2 o'clock. At 3, I couldn't keep my eyes open anymore. I forced myself to sleep, my mind still clouded with anger. When I woke up the next morning, she was in our bed. I had no idea when she had come home. I got up, showered, got dressed for work, and left without waking her. No kiss. No goodbye. For the first time in our marriage, I wanted her to know I was pissed. Before I left for work that morning, I grabbed the iPad and threw it into my briefcase. I didn't know why. Maybe I wanted proof. Maybe I just wanted to hold on to something tangible in the midst of the chaos that had become my marriage. I got to work, buried myself in meetings and phone calls, trying to pretend everything was normal. But the moment I had a break, I pulled out the iPad. As soon as I turned on the screen, a notification popped up. "Buddy is typing." I hesitated, my finger hovering over the app. Then, I opened it. What I saw made my blood run cold. It was a horrific exchange of messages, the kind that were meant to self-destruct. But this version of the app must have been outdated because I was able to watch their conversation unfold in real time. "Buddy, last night was insane." My wife, "Yeah, haha. I barely remember some of it." "Buddy, you were so damn hot. Making love to you was unreal." "Buddy, and the guys had fun too." I damn near lost it. My hands clenched around the iPad, my vision blurred with rage. My breath came in sharp, shallow bursts. But then it got worse. "My wife, send me a video of you." I froze. No way. But Buddy didn't even hesitate. A video appeared in the chat. Against every instinct in my body, I pressed play. I barely got through 3 seconds before I slammed the iPad shut. I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I was drowning in disgust, rage, and heartbreak all at once. I couldn't stay at work. I somehow managed to get permission to leave for the day, but it took hours before I felt stable enough to even get behind the wheel. I was afraid of what I might say, afraid of what I might do. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my anger had settled into something worse, numbness. I stepped inside and found her still asleep in our bed, like nothing had happened. Like my world hadn't just shattered into a million irreparable pieces. I set my things down and took a deep breath before speaking. Get up, I said, my voice disturbingly calm. Come downstairs. She rubbed her eyes, stretching lazily, completely unaware of what was about to happen. I walked down first, sitting at the table. When she finally made her way down, she yawned, plopping into the chair across from me. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in our marriage, I didn't recognize the woman sitting in front of me. Tell me everything that happened last night, I said. She frowned. What do you mean? You already know. We just drank, played pool, and talked. That's it. She nodded. That's it. I let the silence hang for a moment, studying her face. Then, I asked, when was the last time you talked to Buddy? She shifted in her seat. This morning. Just a few messages back and forth. Nothing in particular. I inhaled deeply. My hands were flat on the table, steady, even though every fiber of my being wanted to flip it over. Then, I dropped the bomb. Would your story change if you knew I watched the entire conversation you had with him this morning? The blood drained from her face. Her lips trembled, and then, waterworks. She burst into tears, her whole body shaking. The first thing out of her mouth wasn't an apology. It wasn't even denial. Are you leaving me? That was all she cared about. Her hands clutched at her own arms, her sobs racking her body. And then, finally, the truth started pouring out. I don't remember everything, she admitted through shaky breaths. I know I slept with Buddy and another teammate. My stomach twisted. Just them? I don't know, she stammered, wiping her face. It might have been more guys. I don't remember. I leaned back in my chair, staring at her. The room felt too quiet, too empty despite the fact that she was still sitting in front of me. I was disgusted, physically repulsed. But I wasn't done. Was this the first time? I asked. She shook her head slowly, fresh tears rolling down her face. No. I clenched my jaw. When? She swallowed hard, unable to meet my eyes. A few times. And one time it was here, while you were sleeping upstairs. I closed my eyes. That was it. The last thread snapped. I stood up, walking away from her as she sobbed into her hands. I grabbed a bag and tossed it onto the couch. Pack your stuff, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. Greg, please. I don't want to hear it. Pack your stuff. She did. She folded clothes through sniffles and wails, throwing things into the bag in a messy heap. She pleaded with me not to tell anyone, begged me to keep her secret. And then, just like that, she was gone. Now, I sit alone in the quiet of my own horror story, 2 weeks out from D-Day, with no idea of what to do. I really hope I don't take the cake for the worst D-Day experience, but it's hard to imagine anything worse than catching my wife in a gangbang scenario, with guys we had both welcomed into our lives. And then to find out that this had been going on for months, at least with one of them. It was like being stabbed in the gut, over and over again. Now, she wants to blame it all on alcohol. Says she's an addict. Swears she's going to start AA. And, here's the real kicker. She wants us to go to couples therapy. She actually thinks we can come out of this together. I think it's way too late for that. But I'm a chump, because despite everything, I still feel the full range of emotions. Anger, heartbreak, disgust, and, somehow, guilt. I don't even know why. Maybe because I keep replaying everything in my head, trying to pinpoint the moment she became this person. Maybe because, despite it all, she still looks at me with tears in her eyes, begging for another chance. Like I owe her one. I have a meeting with an attorney tomorrow. I tell myself I'm making the right move, that there's no other way forward, but there's still this tiny, nagging voice in the back of my head whispering that I'm throwing away years of my life. I shake it off. She's the one who threw everything away. But the worst part? I can't even talk to her without picturing it. Without imagining her sandwiched between these guys, acting like I never even existed. And this wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a choice she made, over and over again. A betrayal so deep that I feel physically ill just thinking about it. I know there's no coming back from this. I can't trust her. I can't respect her. I deserve better than this. I may not be perfect, but I sure as hell didn't deserve what she did. So why do I still feel guilty? There's no way to reconcile this, right? I keep questioning myself, wondering if I'm being too harsh, if I should feel something other than this crushing numbness. But no, I'm not the bad guy here. At least, that's what I keep telling myself. I made a few appointments with attorneys, weighing my options. I also met with a legal document preparation specialist just to make sure I had everything in order. My wife had no idea I was doing this. For the first few days after D-Day, we had no direct contact. But she was relentless. Texting, calling, begging to talk. She was adamant that this time, she really was going to put in the effort to save our marriage. She insisted we see a couples therapist, something I had been pushing for months before I found out about her infidelity. The irony would be funny if it didn't make me want to put my fist through a wall. She finally succeeded in getting us on a therapist schedule, but the earliest appointment was still a week and a half away. It didn't matter. I already knew what my choice was going to be. There was no working through this. There was no coming back from it. Still, I went along with it. Maybe just to watch her squirm. To see how far she'd go to convince herself that she hadn't burned everything to the ground. But in the meantime, I became obsessed. I stalked her every move from that damned iPad. I watched everything. Every message. Every interaction. I checked Facebook, Snapchat, WhatsApp, anything and everything I could get my hands on. After a week and a half of scrutinizing every move she made digitally, I found nothing. No new messages, no shady activity, nothing to suggest she was still engaging in her old habits. I started to wonder if maybe, just maybe, she was actually showing true remorse. Maybe she really was trying to change. When the time finally came for our therapy session, I walked in with no expectations. The therapist sat us down and asked us why we were there. I turned to her and said, "Tell him, in your own words." She hesitated for a moment, swallowing hard. Then she started talking. She left out a few key details, like the gangbang, but most of it was there. She admitted to cheating, admitted to making terrible choices, and even admitted to betraying my trust in unforgivable ways. The therapist listened quietly, nodding, taking notes. When she finished, he turned to me and asked, after hearing all of that, "How do you feel about your trust in her? How do you feel about your marriage?" I shook my head, letting out a breath. "If I don't say this out loud right now, I'm afraid I never will," I said, my voice steady but hollow. "There's no coming back from this for me. This marriage is over. The vows were broken, my trust is shattered, and the only thing left to do is get a divorce." My gut twisted as I said it, but at the same time, I felt a strange sense of relief. It was out there. No more pretending. No more waffling. No more maybe we can fix this. It was over. She completely broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. Her body shook as she covered her face with both hands, her cries loud and desperate. "No, please, Greg, don't do this," she gasped between sobs. "We can fix this. I'll do anything. I swear to God, I'll do anything." I exhaled slowly, keeping my voice calm. "I don't know what can be salvaged from this relationship, but the marriage is over. I meant what I said at the altar, and I wouldn't be true to myself if I didn't recognize that this is broken, unfixable." The therapist gave me a small nod, then turned to her, his tone gentle but firm. "Greg's feelings and his decision are completely rational. Given what's happened," he told her. "He's not making this choice lightly. Right now, the best thing for both of you is to focus on healing as individuals." She was still sobbing, rocking slightly in her seat, but I could see the moment it started to sink in. The moment she realized there were no magic words that could undo this. The rest of the session was spent trying to calm her down. The therapist insisted that from this point forward, we should see him separately, not as a couple, but as individuals. Maybe, years from now, we could have a conversation about reconciliation. But I'll say it right now so no one has to worry. I have absolutely no intention of reconciling. Ever. That night, I sat alone in our house, staring at the divorce paperwork I had already started. I knew I was about to embark on a legal battle that could turn ugly if I wasn't careful. We were in a no-fault state, and as the breadwinner, I was at risk of getting financially wrecked. Keeping things amicable was my best move. A week and a half passed. By now, we had both attended at least one individual therapy session. Her narrative to her family was that we were ending the marriage due to broken vows, but that we were both trying to heal. I didn't care what she told them. I had bigger things to worry about. She was still staying with family. Meanwhile, I continued my obsession with tracking her digital presence. I searched for any sign, any proof, that she was still engaging in the same disgusting habits. Not because I wanted to hurt myself with the knowledge, but because I needed to know. And for a while, I found nothing. Then one night, while scrolling through her linked accounts for the 100th time, I realized something. There was a place I hadn't checked. The App Store. I pulled up the iCloud account and checked the download history. And there it was. Nearly 2 weeks earlier, she had downloaded a secret texting app. My stomach clenched so hard I thought I might be sick. This whole time, she had been hiding something. Knowing I had her iPad, something she insisted I keep so I could begin to trust her again, I realized she probably didn't understand that an app downloaded on one iCloud device could be seen in the history from any cloud-connected device. My stomach twisted as I pieced it together. She thought she was being careful. She thought she had covered her tracks. But she had left a door open, and I had just walked through it. I had to know what she was hiding. Without even thinking, my hands moved on their own. I downloaded the app onto her iPad, tried a few of her most common login passwords, and Viola. She had been messaging Buddy on this app since after our first therapy appointment. She hadn't stopped. She hadn't changed. She hadn't even hesitated. And it wasn't just messages. They had continued sleeping together. They planned their meetups around my schedule. They made sure I was nowhere near before they got together. She had sent him pictures, talked about me like I was nothing, and laughed with him about how easy it was to get away with it. My stomach lurched. I ran to the bathroom, barely making it in time before I vomited. My whole body shook as I gripped the edges of the sink, staring at my reflection, hollow-eyed and broken. The sound of my ragged breathing filled the small space. My head spun. My chest felt tight. Then the tears came. I don't know how long I stood there, crying until my whole body ached. But at some point, I walked back into the bedroom like a man possessed. I pulled open every cabinet, every drawer, grabbing whatever prescription strength medication I could find. My hands trembled as I scooped them up, a handful of assorted pills, too many to count. I sat down on the edge of the bed, staring at them in my palm, my mind screaming and silent at the same time. This could all be over. I wouldn't have to feel this anymore. I wouldn't have to live in this nightmare. I picked up my phone. My fingers hovered over my mom's number. I called. No answer. My dad. No answer. My sister. She picked up. Greg? It's 3 a.m. What's? I broke. The words tumbled out between violent, gasping sobs. I told her everything. The affair. The secret messages. The app. The proof. I could barely breathe. Greg, she said, her voice urgent. Stay on the phone with me, okay? Don't hang up. I don't care how long it takes. I'm right here. She didn't know what was in my hand. She didn't know how close I was. But somehow she knew. She kept me talking, kept me from slipping further. I don't even remember what I said. I just know that an hour passed. Maybe more. Eventually, I went numb. When we finally hung up, I stood up, walked into the bathroom, and emptied my hand back into one of the bottles. I put them all away, washed my hands, and crawled into bed, staring at the ceiling until the sun started creeping through the blinds. I didn't sleep. I couldn't stand being in that house a second longer. I forced myself to get dressed, grabbed the bottle of pills and the iPad, and drove straight to work. As soon as I arrived, I walked into my most trusted coworker's office. Without a word, I placed the items on his desk. Lock these up, I said, my voice hollow. Don't give them back to me. No matter what. No questions asked. He stared at me for a long moment before nodding. Got it. He reached out, gave my shoulder a firm pat, and let me walk away. Now, I had everything I had been looking for. Undeniable proof that not only was my wife a cheater, but she was a cold-blooded liar. For days, I wrestled with what to do. I wanted to expose her, to tell everyone. I wanted her family, my family, our friends, everyone to know exactly what kind of person she was. But I couldn't. The legal process was already in motion. If I made a move too soon, she could retaliate, and this could get ugly. So I stayed silent. But she didn't. As the days passed and I ignored her texts and calls, she started showing up. And one day, she came to the house. When I opened the door, my heart hammered in my chest, but I forced myself to appear calm. She looked at me with wide, searching eyes, her face full of concern. I just wanted to check on you, she said softly. You won't answer me. I've been worried. I clenched my jaw. I'm fine. She frowned. No, you're not. You're acting weird. I didn't answer. She took a step closer, frustration creeping into her voice. Greg, what is going on? Talk to me. I finally met her gaze and said, have you had any contact with Buddy whatsoever since that night? She blinked. What? No. You're sure about that? She scoffed, shaking her head. I blocked him on everything. I would never do that to you. He's disgusting. You have to believe me. I inhaled slowly. My hands felt ice cold. Then what about this app? I pulled out my phone. Her face paled. And what about this video? I continued, hitting play. The screen lit up, displaying the app, the messages, the plans she and Buddy had made, the pictures she had sent. Her eyes went wide with horror. She crumpled to the floor. And then, she started crying, begging me. She collapsed onto the ground, sobbing, crying, and begging me for what exactly? Forgiveness? Another chance? For me to just forget everything I had seen? I kept my tone indifferent. So here's what's going to happen, I said, arms crossed as I stared down at her. I'm not going to tell anyone about this. And in exchange, you're not going to fight me at all in the divorce process. You'll be served with the papers, and then you'll do nothing. No contesting, no dragging this out. No trying to screw me over in court. I'm going to be fair, more than you deserve. But if you even think about making this difficult, people are going to find out why I'm being so unreasonable. Your choice. She didn't answer right away, just kept crying, hands covering her face, shoulders shaking with every sob. But I saw the moment the realization hit. She wasn't sorry. Not really. She was just devastated that she had been caught. 2 days later, she was served. Since then, I've kept my word. I haven't told anyone outside of my immediate family, but I know the truth. Thanks to Find My iPhone, because, for some reason, she still hasn't changed her iCloud password. I know she's been at his house every single night. The house where he still lives with his mother. Her family thinks she's been going to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, working on herself, trying to be better. But my screenshots tell a different story. Every night, like clockwork, she goes to a meeting, only to end up at his place instead. I don't know why I keep compiling evidence, but I do. Maybe it's just my way of holding on to something. Proof that I'm not crazy, that this all really happened. The injustice of it all eats away at me. She gets to be surrounded by her family, pretending everything is fine, playing the part of the wounded wife trying to heal. And then, as soon as the sun sets, she sneaks off to be with him, only to return in the middle of the night and keep up appearances. Meanwhile, I come home every evening to an empty house filled with ghosts of what used to be. The silence is deafening. The loneliness is suffocating. I'm past the worst of it. There's no danger of me spiraling like I did that first night, but these are dark days nonetheless. I take everything hour by hour, day by day, just waiting for the moment when this is all truly over. When I no longer have to worry about her dragging me through court and trying to ruin me financially. I've gone completely no contact. And for the first time in what feels like forever, I can finally breathe. The divorce process may have hurt me more emotionally in the long run, but at least it didn't destroy me financially. That was my main priority, ensuring that she walked away with as little as possible. Legally, my state would have required me to pay her spousal support, nearly $2,000 a month for half the length of our marriage, because it was a no-fault divorce, and I had been the breadwinner. But there was no way in hell I was going to let that happen. No way, no how. Not after what she did to me. At first, I was just angry. Then I thought things through. And then I devised a plan to get out of this marriage as quickly, cleanly, and fully as possible. Looking back, I'm not exactly proud of the tactics I used, but I also don't regret them. Maybe my moral high ground took a hit, but compared to the mountain of betrayal she dumped on me, my actions were nothing more than a molehill. I already had the divorce papers prepared and submitted to the county. I just needed confirmation from the court, but I kept this from my wife. She was still staying with her family, and as far as I was concerned, she was never stepping foot in my house again. I arranged a few meetups with her. The conversations were painful to sit through, but I played my part. I wanted her to believe there was some hope left, that maybe, just maybe, we could salvage what we had. You know, I sighed during one of our talks, staring down at my coffee cup. I keep thinking about everything, and I just don't see how we can fix this while we're still married. She blinked. What do you mean? If we want to start over, I continued, keeping my tone slow and thoughtful, we have to start fresh. We need to end this marriage and begin again. Get to know each other, court each other, rebuild something real. I still can't believe she bought it. Even typing this out makes me want to gag. To sell the illusion even further, I made it seem like I wanted to speed things along for her sake. I told her I wanted this to be as painless as possible, that I didn't want to drag things through the courts or make a spectacle out of it. This way, we can keep it quiet, I told her gently. No messy battles, no stress. Just get through this part so we can focus on us. The final move was how I had her served. We had a mutual friend, someone she trusted, come over to my house, the house we had once shared. It was a simple exchange, casual, nothing dramatic. Here, the friend said, handing her the papers. Just sign where it's marked. She didn't even hesitate, didn't scan through them, didn't question anything. She signed the documents, sealed them in the envelope, and handed them back without so much as a second glance. I doubt she ever even read them, because I had painted her a very, very pretty picture, one completely absent of any spousal support beyond splitting what was in our account at the time. The single biggest issue I wanted to avoid was paying her spousal support. Over the first few months, I played the I need time to think card as hard as I could, using it to keep my distance while still stringing her along. I only met with her about twice a month, usually for dinner or a casual meetup in a public place. Always public, so she could never claim I tried to hurt her or pull any kind of stunt. Every time we met, I made small talk, acted like I gave a damn, and played the part of the emotionally conflicted husband, slowly working through my pain. I just need more time, I would say, sighing as I stirred my drink. It's been hard to process everything, but I want to believe we can find a way back to each other. She would nod, sometimes looking guilty, sometimes hopeful. Either way, I had her exactly where I needed her to be, cooperative. By keeping her on the hook, I was able to accomplish every major step of the separation without resistance. She willingly helped remove herself from my bank accounts. I convinced her to take her name off the lease. I even got her to move all of her belongings into a storage unit, feeding her some nonsense about how the house felt too haunted by memories for me to heal properly. If we really want a fresh start, I had told her, we should get a new place together when we're ready. Somewhere that doesn't carry all of this pain. She ate it up, every last bit. Keeping her in this state of false hope made the whole process insanely easy. She actually believed she was doing the right thing for us. I just had to keep it going for 6 months until the divorce was finalized. By month 4, I could finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. And then, it all nearly went to hell. I was sitting at home when I got a text from one of her family members, the one she was staying with. "Are you guys still working things out?" That was an odd way to phrase it. This person knew about Buddy. They knew the whole truth. But to keep up appearances, I played dumb. "Yeah, why?" The reply came with a picture. It was my wife, sitting in a restaurant, with Buddy. "This is happening right now." Apparently, this family member had been out with co-workers for drinks when they spotted them together. For months, I had been playing the long game, keeping my emotions in check. But this sent me over the edge. Without thinking, I fired off a text to my wife. "Hey, can you talk?" She replied almost immediately. "I'm in an AA meeting. I'll call you as soon as I'm out." A lie. A stupid lie. And I wasn't about to let it slide. Didn't know they held AA meetings at the Golden Lotus. "Is Buddy your sponsor now?" That got her attention. My phone rang almost instantly. The second I picked up, she was already yelling. "You're stalking me now?" "What the hell, Greg?" I laughed coldly. "Stalking you? Are you serious right now? You don't get to control what I do." "Who I see? You're a goddamn joke." I snapped, my patience gone. "I don't know why I wasted any more time on you. You and that idiot deserve each other." She started to argue, but I didn't care anymore. I was done. I hung up, blocked her number. From that point on, the last 2 months of the divorce played out with her in a full-blown relationship with Buddy. At first, they tried to keep it private, but eventually, it became public. I had blocked them both on all social media, but through mutual friends, word still trickled in. Questions arose. More and more people started reaching out, wanting to know what was going on. Apparently, my wife was getting bolder. She had started posting status updates and pictures of the two of them together, her and Buddy. If someone reached out to me and asked, I didn't hold back. I told them as much as they wanted to know. The friendships and relationships I truly valued, the people I actually cared about, I had to get on my side. And honestly, it didn't take much. Just telling them the truth was enough. The validation, hearing people who knew us both say out loud that what she did to me was horrific, felt more important than any material division in the divorce itself. For the first time since this nightmare started, I had people to vent to. And boy, did I vent. Almost everyone who called me had already spoken to her in some way, either directly or through mutual connections. Trying to figure out who the hell this guy was that she was suddenly plastering all over social media. A common theme emerged. She wasn't outright denying that she had cheated, but she was drastically downplaying everything. Things were complicated between us, she told people. We had been growing apart for a long time. And my personal favorite, we were technically already separated when Buddy and I got close. That last one had me seeing red. She really said that? I asked over the phone when my friend Jason filled me in. Yeah, man, he sighed. She's making it sound like the marriage was already done and that Buddy just happened. Unbelievable. I let out a dry laugh. Let me guess, she left out the part where she was still sleeping in our bed, telling me she loved me, while also sneaking around with him. Yeah, I'd say that detail was conveniently missing, Jason muttered. Well, I had no problem filling in the gaps. Every time someone called me, I laid out the entire story, every ugly, humiliating detail. One by one, our mutual friends, most of whom I had assumed would remain neutral, started shifting to my side. Even her closest relatives, the ones I figured would back her no matter what, were stunned. I asked them all not to say anything until the divorce was finalized. I didn't need any extra drama before I was legally free of her. The longer she and Buddy were together, the more public they got with their relationship. And the more public they got, the more my phone rang. It reached a point where I had to start telling people to stop updating me. Every new piece of information felt like a fresh wound, and I was trying my best to heal. Then came Valentine's Day, just days before our divorce was set to be finalized. That morning, I woke up to 3 different messages from 3 different people, all of them sending me the same screenshot. It was a Facebook post. A picture of the two of them, locked in some nauseating embrace, with an over-the-top caption about love and fate. God is so amazing to have delivered such a wonderful man into my life. I couldn't be happier. I truly believe he's the man I'll marry someday. Whenever a door closes, God opens a window. I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting into knots. A minute later, Jason texted me. Dude, what the hell? I didn't even know what to say. A mixture of disgust, anger, and something deeper, something close to grief, hit me all at once. The worst part? A handful of her extended family and old friends were commenting, confused. Wait, who is this? One person asked. A few shocked emoji reactions sprinkled across the post, as if even people who barely knew her were struggling to process it. I wish I could say it didn't bother me, that I was completely indifferent to it all, but I wasn't. Deep down, I still felt the loss. But now, Mixed in with that loss was a profound sense of regret. Regret that I had ever loved this woman, that I had ever trusted her, that I hadn't seen the monster standing right in front of me for so many years. Not to mention what a despicable human being Buddy is. I truly have no respect for him, no energy to comment on or worry about his fate. He made his bed. If he wants to lie in it with her, so be it. The karma train is bound to hit him eventually. Let him stick around with my ex-wife, someone I feel like I no longer even know. In a twisted way, that realization has made moving forward a little easier. And then, finally, the day arrived. Last week, the court-appointed date of the dissolution of our marriage came and went. I hadn't been served any papers. She missed her chance to fight for anything beyond what we had already agreed upon months ago, back when we were still foolish enough to think we could work things out. In the end, I walked away with everything that mattered, my entire 401k intact, no spousal support, no extra debt in my name, no lawyers, no court battles, no more reasons to ever deal with this person again. That night, I blocked her number from my phone. The next day, 7 of my closest friends, 6 of whom were mutual friends, threw me a divorce party. They documented the whole thing on Snapchat, and I didn't stop them. It felt like something worth celebrating, a moment that needed to be marked. Turns out, my ex-wife didn't appreciate that sentiment. She ended up blocking every single one of them on social media and sending a few choice texts to some. Wow, she's losing it, my friend Jason laughed, showing me his screen. You're disgusting. I thought you were better than this. What kind of person celebrates something so tragic? I shook my head. She's acting like she's the victim. She's pissed because she thought she'd have people left in her corner, he said. But, man, her maid of honor was here tonight. That should tell her something. Her maid of honor, the same woman who had stood beside her on our wedding day, wanted nothing to do with her anymore. That was all I needed to know. But there's still something weighing on me. One final, internal struggle that won't let me rest. Back in those early days, when I was in full-blown obsession mode, scouring every digital footprint she left behind, I uncovered something that's been eating at me ever since. Turns out, Buddy wasn't the only one. While all of this was happening, she had also been sleeping with a man from her hometown, an old flame. And that man, he has a wife and a kid at home. I've been wrestling with this for weeks. Do I say something? Do I track down his wife, tell her what I know? Or do I keep my mouth shut and let it go? Every time I think about it, I feel sick. The thought of destroying a family, of being the reason a child's world gets turned upside down, is something I can't fully rationalize. But at the same time, the idea of standing by, knowing this woman is being lied to, makes me just as nauseous. I've played out every scenario in my head 100 times over. Do I stay anonymous? Do I identify myself? Do I reach out at all? The uncertainty, the weight of this decision, has settled in my chest like a stone. It's a worm in my brain that won't stop moving, and it's gotten to the point where I'm losing sleep. Some nights, I wake up in a cold sweat, heart pounding, stomach twisting. The anxiety of it all follows me into my dreams, turning into restless, fragmented nightmares that won't let me go. The divorce was finalized in February 2019. I tried my best to go no contact, but that's easier said than done. I didn't speak to her or anything like that, but every now and then, I'd see a post from a distant family member of hers that I hadn't yet blocked, or a friend would unintentionally mention something they saw on a mutual friend's Snapchat. Little things, reminders I didn't want. My real friends did their best to keep these updates from me, but some news was just too big to keep quiet. The first major bombshell came in May 2019, when one of my best friends called me, his voice strained with hesitation. Man, I didn't know whether to tell you this or not, but she's getting remarried. I blinked. Wait, what? Yeah, he sighed. To some guy from Tennessee. My brain struggled to process the words. You're kidding. I wish I was, he said. My wife still got her on Facebook. She hasn't blocked her yet, and she saw the whole thing go down. Screenshots and everything. I could almost hear the sound of my heartbeat in my ears. I knew she'd move on eventually, but this fast? I had assumed Buddy would still be in the picture, but apparently, that didn't last long. I had no idea what happened there, and honestly, I kind of wish I did. Not that it was surprising. Starting in April, her Facebook statuses had taken on a cryptic tone, filled with vague, philosophical musings about how everything happens for a reason. Then came the not-so-subtle hints about falling in love with someone new. Some poor bastard. Then, in July, the confirmation dropped. A single picture, captioned like a Hallmark movie cliché. The image showed her and some random guy, someone none of our mutual friends had ever heard of, standing in a courthouse, holding hands. Rings on their fingers. Marriage certificate in hand. The location was geotagged in California. She had even updated her last name. The caption read something like, "Excited to start the rest of my life with such an amazing man. feeling so blessed. Look out, Tennessee, here we come. I just stared at my phone, trying to process what I was looking at. Dude, my friend finally said, breaking the silence. I don't even know what to say. I let out a dry laugh. Yeah, me neither. I know this entire story. Hell, everything I've written since the beginning. Might seem unbelievable. But I swear to you, this is the God's honest truth. And if you've stuck with me this long, I hope you trust me enough to keep going. The thing is, my curiosity got the better of me. I needed to know more. I reached out to one of my ex-wife's cousin-in-laws, someone I had always gotten along with, to get the full story. To my surprise, he didn't hesitate. Dude, it's crazy, he said. She met this guy online. They'd been talking for a few months, calls, texts, all that. And I guess they fell hard and fast. He actually proposed to her over the phone. I almost dropped my drink. You're joking. Nope. He sighed. She said yes. And they just couldn't wait. I rubbed my temples. Jesus Christ. Yeah, man, he continued. Within a week of the proposal, she started telling her family, trying to get them to come to the wedding. I let out a breath, shaking my head. Where the hell did they even get married? The hesitation in his voice told me there was more. That's the weird part, he said finally. It wasn't even in Tennessee. It was in some random town about 2 hours from here for some reason. I frowned. Wait, what? I don't know, man. He flew out to California, and they got married that Saturday. That day was also the first time they had met face to face. But just like that, they were man and wife. I sat back in my chair, letting that sink in. You've got to be kidding me. I wish I was. He let out a low whistle. The kicker? Not a single person from her family showed up to the courthouse wedding. No way. Swear to God. Whether it was because they didn't have time to plan or just didn't care enough to be there, they got married unceremoniously. And you know damn well that had to bother the hell out of her. I shook my head. I knew her well enough to know she had always dreamed of a big, extravagant wedding. She used to talk about it all the time. The idea of her getting married in some drab courthouse, without family, without fanfare, it didn't add up. It had to be eating her alive. And get this, he continued. Sunday was spent packing up a moving truck with all of her stuff, and by Monday, they were headed east for Tennessee. I let out a dry laugh. Jesus, that poor bastard. That's what I'm saying. If only he knew. If he had a clue, he would have had the sense not to get married in California of all places, I muttered. A no-fault state? If this goes south, he could end up in the same damn mess I was in. You think he knows what she's like? I exhaled sharply. I hope he just doesn't know. Because if he does, then he's got to be the dumbest man alive. For the time being, I did my best to shake them both from my mind. The one silver lining in all of this was that they were moving far, far away. Tennessee was a godsend. It meant I wouldn't run into her in a grocery store, wouldn't see her car at a red light. She was out of sight, and I prayed to God she'd stay that way. Summer came and went. I finally felt like I was finding my footing again. But right in the middle of fall, another bombshell dropped. I was thumbing through Instagram when a video popped up on my screen. My ex-wife was in the frame, holding a plate in front of her father, who had his hands covering his eyes. Before I could fully process what I was looking at, I saw it, a single cookie covered in blue frosting. Then her voice, giddy with excitement. 3, 2, 1. Her father uncovered his eyes, and the realization dawned on me just as he erupted in joy. It was a gender reveal video. A gender reveal video. My stomach twisted. Why the hell was I seeing this? Then it hit me. Her mother had just created a public Instagram account, and apparently, Instagram's algorithm thought I'd like to see a video from someone I may know. I completely lost it. I had been doing well. I had been moving forward. But this was a gut punch I never saw coming. The next few days were hell. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think straight. A mix of emotions churned inside me. Disgust, pain, frustration, and, if I was being honest, a bitter twinge of jealousy. I had always wanted to be a father. That was one of my greatest aspirations in life. And if things had played out differently, if none of this had happened, this could have been me. That could have been my child. I could have been the one standing there, celebrating. But I wasn't. Instead, I was 32 years old, single, and nowhere near having the family I once dreamed of. I had imagined being a father by now, and yet, here I was, not even on a path toward a serious relationship. I tried to remind myself that I still had time, that life wasn't over, that one day I'd meet someone who actually deserved me. But it was impossible not to compare where I was to where I thought I'd be. The only solace I found was in the fact that I knew I was better off than her new husband. I had escaped. He was just now stepping into the fire. By now, the baby was probably already born, but thankfully, I'd had the good fortune to not hear a damn thing about it. And honestly, that was the best case scenario. It was better to not know than to get dragged into that mess again. The good news is that, as time has gone on, she and her dumpster fire of a life cross my mind less and less. And and I consider that progress. There are still bad days, of course, and the stay-at-home orders have only made them worse. Some days feel unbearably depressing. The isolation gets to me. I work as an independent contractor, which means I can work from home, but that also means long stretches of time without any real human interaction. I try to get out and walk, just to break up the monotony, but I miss the gym. More than that, I miss the simple things, grabbing a coffee with a friend, hitting the bar for a beer after a long week, having casual conversations that don't happen through a screen. I've gone back home to visit my parents more than usual, just to have company that isn't coming from a webinar or a phone call. Sitting at the kitchen table with my dad, watching my mom putter around the house, it's a comfort that reminds me I'm not completely alone. I hate seeing you like this, my mom admitted one evening, setting down a plate of leftovers in front of me. I sighed, poking at the food with my fork. I know, Mom. I'm doing my best. She sat across from me, her eyes soft with concern. I know you are, sweetheart, and I know you'll come out of this even stronger. Her words helped, even if I didn't fully believe them at the time. I knew, logically, that this situation was affecting everyone in some way. I wasn't alone in this. When I started feeling hopeless, I forced myself to remember the early days after D-Day, how I truly thought I wouldn't survive it. Yet here I was. I made it through that nightmare, and I'd make it through this one, too. One day at a time. One moment to the next if need be. Because time moves forward, whether we're ready for it or not. 3 years later, I don't have any updates on my ex-wife or her situation, and that's because I've finally gone completely no contact. No family members, no mutual friends, no social media slipping unwanted information into my life. It was the best decision I could have made for myself. At first, it was hard. Cutting off her family felt like losing my own. I remember talking to my friend, Mark, about it one night over drinks. You did the right thing, he said, taking a sip of his beer. It's like ripping off a Band-Aid. Hurts like hell at first, but you're better off without it in the long run. I exhaled heavily, running a hand through my hair. I know. It just sucks. They were my family, you know? Some of them felt like real blood relatives. Mark nodded. Yeah, man. But at the end of the day, you have to do what's best for you. And keeping ties to them just keeps ties to her. He was right, of course. The hardest part wasn't just losing my marriage. It was losing the family that came with it. And coming to terms with that loss. It was hard and unfair, but ultimately, it was necessary. I know this strategy is working for me because as time goes on, there are far more days when I don't think about her at all versus when I do. And even when she does cross my mind, it's more of a thank God I dodged that crap storm than any lingering sorrow or pain. Time and distance have done their job, and I finally feel like I've reclaimed my life. This past year, during the pandemic, I made a huge change. I left my job and started my own independent consulting business in tech support and IT system design. It was a leap of faith, but it paid off quickly. Within a few months, I landed several contracts, including 2 government organizations in my county. It's been a hell of a lot of work, but both contracts have already been renewed for another 12 months, with no signs of slowing down. Working for myself, being in complete control of my success, has been invigorating. No office politics, no micromanaging bosses, just me, my skills, and my ability to deliver results. There's something incredibly satisfying about that. You actually look happy, Mark said the last time we grabbed a drink. He studied me like he was trying to figure out what changed. I smirked, leaning back in my chair. Because I am. He raised an eyebrow. You? Happy? Don't sound so shocked. I laughed, taking a sip of my beer. Turns out, making my own decisions, building something for myself, it's a game changer. Mark nodded, impressed. Yeah, well, you deserve it. After everything, man, you really do. And I feel like I do. My finances are in better shape than they've ever been. My mind is mostly free from the memories that used to haunt me. My body is healthier than it has been in years. For the first time since everything fell apart, I feel good about myself as a man. I have self-worth again, and that alone has made an incredible difference in how I view the past. The one thing that still lingers, though, is my lack of trust, especially when it comes to relationships. Professionally, it was easy. Leaving my job and going into business for myself was a no-brainer because I only had to rely on me. But romantically, that's where it gets complicated. I tried online dating about a year ago, thinking maybe I was ready to put myself out there again. It only took 3 or 4 dates to realize that the whole thing was an absolute cesspool. The women I met weren't looking for something real, despite what their profiles claimed. They wanted attention, validation, a revolving door of options. It didn't take long to realize that every single one of them was likely talking to multiple men at once, and honestly, I've had enough of that for a lifetime. After one particularly dull date, I remember sitting in my car, staring at my steering wheel, asking myself, why am I even doing this? I called Mark on the drive home. That's it. I'm done, I said before he even had a chance to say hello. Oh, so it went that well, huh? He chuckled. Dude, she spent half the dinner on her phone, probably texting the next guy she was going to meet up with. I sighed. I'm not built for this. I don't want to be an option. I want to be the choice. Yeah, I get that, Mark admitted. So what now? I focus on me. If something real happens down the road, great. But I'm not wasting my time on this garbage anymore. That's exactly where I stand now. I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. I just refuse to let anyone into my life just for the sake of not being alone. Of course, I still want that deep connection. I want to share my life with someone again. But I'm willing to be patient. I'm willing to do the work, to continue putting my life on the best course, and to keep my heart open to the idea that love could find me again. Still, I can't help but have these nagging thoughts in the back of my mind. I'm 34. I should have had a wife and kids by now. I should be like my friends, married, paying a mortgage, going on family trips, doting on my children, living that picture-perfect life. Instead, what do I have? Money in the bank. Does that really make up for everything I lost? I know I need to work on this. I know that holding myself to some theoretical timeline in my head isn't helping me in any way. The truth is, I'm grateful for the life I have now. I'm blessed beyond belief that I'm not living some alternate version of my life where I'm still tied to my ex-wife. I'm hopeful that if I keep putting myself first, if I keep making the most of every day, then no matter what happens, I'll be able to look back and say, I'm proud of who I am, that I took a bad hand and made the absolute most out of it. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.